MV3 Traders Futures Trade Radio is brought to you by the Ultimate Traders Guide, your one-stop shop for the most valuable income-producing information on the internet. Go to ultimatetradersguide.net to learn more. Link in the description below. All right, what's going on, everyone? See, CPI brought in some excitement. NQ climbed over 3%. And we're at the open. Let's see what else. Let's see how long we stay up here. Looking at I got a glimpse of a value area like above 250. One more thing I need to take care of. All right, I'm ready. We're going on a nice inventory hunt, which, you know, makes sense to have this sort of response, this retracement after moving so far away from standard deviation. And this has been the trend lately for these days where we have that, like a strong volatile move before the open, usually off of news. We'll have that move and then we'll have some retracement and then things will settle down and we'll build more it's like sensible structure. I don't even know what to call it, but if we can continue with the trend, or it could completely reverse. Even with this sort of a move, the move that we saw for CPI. There is still a slight possibility for this thing to flip short. Although that's not the most likely thing to happen, but it helps to keep an open mind. But stick to the whatever strategy, whatever plan you have. Consistency is where it's at. So we did pick up some quick inventory off of 230. We're dropping that inventory now after a brief retest. Coming back inside of that zone. why this is not trying to trigger my trade copier. Little setup. When I click on the screen here, it's supposed to just come up on my stream deck. It's a minor thing though. Still slowly dropping inventory. So the main area where I would be paying attention to is 150. That's where we saw our first inventory response off of the news. And there was inventory before that, but the main inventory happened around 150. And then we have VWAP around 100. All lined up with mechanical areas of, structural areas from a 3-minute print. And another way to look at this from the wholesale perspective is on that CPI. We had the inventory from the last couple of trading sessions. I'm trying to remember what happened Monday, but we also did pick up some inventory yesterday, and we got rid of pretty much all of that on the news. So now we got to restock our shelves, and we're not going to just go and just only buy inventory all at one time. We're not going to do it all at one time. We're going to budget along the way, meaning we're going to buy some inventory, let a little bit of it go to build our capital, buy some cheaper inventory, and we're going to keep repeating that process until we have the whatever amount of inventory that we're looking for, and we do our job, we meet our quotas. You also got to understand that wholesale's main job is to provide liquidity. For both sides. So whatever money they can make inside of that, that's how they get paid for, but their main job is to really provide liquidity. Still hunting for cheap inventory. We had a nice supply response off of automation. I could have got fancy here, understanding like what's the most likely scenario and took some shorts in here, but that's not part of my strategy, so just gonna be patient. Also saying awareness to myself, a little moment of transparency that wasn't 100% locked in like I need to be, because I'm not looking for anything yet, but I need to get out of that state and actually focus to get myself in tune and in sequence with what's going on. Even though I'm not looking for a setup that gets me mentally where I need to be, so when I do start looking for that setup, it's not as, I don't have to turn on a new trigger or whatever. I can just execute when it's time to execute. It's always key to maintain that awareness itself.
Testing. Is that too loud or is that too low? How am I coming in?
It's got a little bit of white noise, but volume wise, you're good.
For now, we're gonna have to keep the white noise. I hope I'm not interrupting anything just yet. I wanted to test, and I'm playing with the input settings. But you said the volume's okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Interesting times, and I see you're in the room, so I had to come in.
That little push right there gave us a nice little supply run. With some quick inventory around 210 where we have automation.
Just a little perspective. So what you've just described is what I would zoom in and say is the machines in front of the beings. And the being that we're looking for is our buyer and seller. Where are they positioned in the market as they've got these machines out there in the battlefield? And what I'm looking at is this seller that's came in. It'd be an 833 print, so they came in on the open and they just took the offer. They let the market go as high as we could using the news at the flow and everything in between. They sat on the top of the offer and they just used the open to lean. So right now, as a bit of perspective, let's keep that in mind as we've now located a buyer. All of this is with declining volume if you're looking at it in 30-minute blocks of time.
And zooming with that, zooming in on a to a really microscopic level, looking at it from a perspective of ticks, you see our buyer sort of getting aggressive. I got quiet there trying to look for my, looking for a setup, but it's not giving me enough room where I wanted to participate, so I'm still waiting.
We're watching our buyer, yeah, and that is a move, but for me, I just want to put this out there too. This buyer's going to reveal to us our seller and their temperament.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're going to move down on the offer to stop this buyer, or if we're going to see. But right now we're watching this buyer come in. And what's interesting too is when I look at the order flow that's coming in, what I'm seeing is that there's more sellers here. So as more sellers are coming in, and that's just as I say that, there's a lean in to balance the flow. 6,500 sellers coming in with 6,500 buyers now coming in within a 3-minute print. So that just printed with a very small margin of about 100 contracts in between, with the sellers leaning on this. Now, what does that even mean? So it's telling me that a participant in a 3-minute segment with volume declining is able to lift the market higher as there's more sellers there. And to me, that's eating liquidity. So if there's more sellers coming into the market, noticing that seller leaning at the top of the offer, our structure high, our session high, and now there's no participation coming in to support that, well, there's now value in coming in as a buyer and just eating the liquidity that's coming in, because we're leaving. There's no increase in participation. Participation is leaving. So now we're coming up to, and let's have you again. You're describing the micro level of this transaction, but I just had to point to that for perspective.
You kind of see that one-sided scenario from how mechanical this is trading, because we just brought back, we were lifted back to this area that I'm calling the shop, and it's resting right there at a indicator that I'm referring to as MSRP, but it's resting right on top of that we're getting very mechanical responses. It's not really just so these MSRP is like a quick way of watching historical structure. So you can see that there's not much of a battle going on right now because everything is still so mechanical.
It's interesting that you say that. We can see that too in the flow of the volume that's coming in. So as the momentum is sort of dying down, and we're still getting sellers. So the market is still generating more sellers than buyers. So if I am taking the other side to this, and I'm watching as this flow is trickling in, and I have to do business, well, it doesn't really cost me to just eat this liquidity, because again, we're watching participation decline. So most of the orders have already been placed, and everyone's sitting back, holding their breath that they're on the right side of the trade. And for the beings who are creating and generating the games, they're sitting right here on the flow. And what do we have? We've got more sellers coming in right now in this 3-minute segment. And what we're doing is we're eating that liquidity. And we're lifting again. And that brings us to, you're calling it MSRP, but I'm seeing my version of MSRP. We're right there right now as that printed. Again, we saw a decline in participation with that last 3-minute print. Immediately what happens is more sellers come in. So if I'm taking to the other side of this, I'm now eating that liquidity because it's not doing anything to me as participation is declining from the grand scheme of things. Now, I mentioned how this would be my MSRP where we're at right now. We're starting to see a rotation. And this is our seller. This is where I was anticipating our seller to show up. We're starting to see somewhat of a signature to our seller showing up. And we're seeing that reflected here as they're leaning on the offer and pushing price down. It's generating more buyers, which is what they need to see if this is our seller showing up to eat that liquidity. Because if I'm really a seller, I need to have buyers for me to unload my supply. If I'm really a buyer, I need to have sellers so that I can get value in buying at a good price. And because now as we lift, as we lean and push price down lower, we're now generating these buyers that I need to see. Part of that has to do with that last little bit of scheme. Took about 9 minutes, 3 prints on low liquidity as I lift price up to trigger new participation to come in, being buyers. I want to get you stuck in a bias. And then when I've got you stuck, and I'm going to wait and see you come in, and then I'm going to move price around to see where you're leaning. And then when I get the buyers that I need, then I'm going to eat that liquidity. And that's what we're starting to see now. Is I move down my offers and I generate buyers to come in as market orders. And I'm eating that liquidity. So what we got to do is we got to see both sides. You know what? I'm not going to even narrate that. I'm not even going to tell you what we got to see. It's up for you guys to see what you see. But I wanted to offer a bit of perspective with just I call them absolute variables. They're going to be the same every day. Every day we're going to have a buyer. Every day we're going to have a seller. Every day it's going to generate participation. But to what degree are we aware of the game that's being played? And the game that we're playing now is this either eating liquidity. So I'm going to stop for a moment because this is what I wanted to see, that seller step in. They stepped in because there were buyers there. And now that's a print. So what's going to be the response? Straight away, we get more buyers to come in. And they're leaning and eating on them. But let's watch the participation, because if they're not going to come in, and I'm holding price because I want to see. And now we're starting to see the margins get thin. We've almost got equal buyers and sellers. Boom. The moment I said equal, it went to equal. And what are we doing now? I'm going to lift. I'm lifting to see now we've got the sellers trapped. So the sellers are taking this. And as volume's declining now, I'm going to eat these sellers. And see, this is what I mean. I just want to do a quick example, real time, where we can see what it means. I want to demonstrate you've got a step in front of AI. So what is AI doing? It's doing all of the machine stuff, the stuff that's faster than I can speak. But all this machine stuff is a reflection of you and me. You know what I mean? So if we're triggered by it, boom, 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 we're just part of the machine. It's no different from AI. You might as well call us AI. In fact, that's what I say. We live in Westworld, and there's a degree of awareness to these things. And if you're not moving to your own spirit and your own uniqueness, the very essence of you, you're no different than AI playing this game. You're just being triggered and programmed. But when you step in front of AI, you're seeing what it's eating and what it's playing off of. And that's you and me. So the moment that everybody gets caught in their trap and we're in a low liquidity environment because we placed our trades, most likely because of the trigger, which is a fee that takes the putting flow into the game to trigger, and then everybody gets triggered, and then we're just waiting to see. And then those who get triggered, we'll see that lean, and that becomes what they eat. All right, so I just had to get that out, especially with the, we'll say, just big burst in energy that brought us to these price levels that we're seeing now. But go ahead, Rob, I'll take a minute to breathe.
Actually deciding if I want to go on this AI conversation, because from what I've been witnessing lately, it's been really interesting to see the collective response to what's being presented as AI. But I know if I go in on that, that's gonna take the focus away from what I'm trying to do.
But see, the thing is, if we keep it focused to the trade, we can make the parallels. Because when you say that, it immediately triggered me too with the AI art specifically, and how I'm starting to see it's. At what point do we type into the program, I want something, and then it generates an image? There comes to a point where you're looking at the mirror and you forget you're the original being that's generating the image.
Yep.
And it would appear we're now at the point to where we're looking at the mirror, forgetting we're the original being that's generating the image in the mirror.
Right.
And see, when you relate that to the market, that's exactly what's happening. When we place a trade, we're just being triggered because we've forgotten that it's a reflection of us and we're the origin in the mirror. So that's really what that whole dialogue was about, is demonstrating how you've got to have a degree of awareness to what's even happening to even tap into your edge and then move and dance in your awareness, which would be your edge as you're seeing it, not being triggered by it, but being aware of the game and then moving in it. All right. I think I really made my point, so I'm going to stop talking.
Order filled.
One thing it can't hide, though, too, is when you step in front of the AI, is when it has to be in certain places. You remember I said I'm anticipating the MSRP level. We're coming up to it, and I'm anticipating our seller to show up. Hey, check it out. They can't hide what they're doing. They can't hide. But when those sellers came in behind the trade and they were trapped, it makes no sense for them. It costs the being behind the machines no money to lift that back up and squeeze out those sellers who thought they can take that bait because they could see where the seller was. And you got to level up the game. But our seller's still here. But they need a buyer, right? If I'm a seller, and I'm really a seller, I need buyers to come in for me to unload. And what we're seeing is too many sellers. Too many sellers are looking at this sell zone. So now I've got to move price around to determine where value is. How am I doing that? I'm going to generate more liquidity that comes in as I move up and down. And I'm going to be measuring and quantify the liquidity that I need so that I can eat. And depending upon how long this takes and what comes in, I might be able to rebalance right back out of this thing and generate a new trap that's going to trigger a whole spectrum of beings. All right, let me stop because I could keep going. Go ahead, Rob.
So to kind of tap into this AI thing, so the way I've been watching it is through these writing programs, and how that people are using these writing programs to create blogs and all this stuff, to write all their copy. Okay, I did got a kind of a trigger coming up, but I have my little 10 o'clock break that I've been taking lately because of the movement that comes in. But basically what I'm saying is, there's a conversation that I've kind of been watching on several platforms where you have people that code that are kind of looking at AI, this way of using AI as a way of taking their jobs. And then that went to, well, it's not a job killer, it's a Google killer. But what the point that I'm seeing that I think that they're missing is that just from a simple standpoint is the way that it's clear that the way that these AI programs are working is they're pretty much doing a very efficient Google search, and they're bringing back, they're using the data that Google has collected and these other servers have collected, and then they're just really quickly doing the search instead of how it takes a human time, the amount of time that it takes to do a search. They're quickly doing the search, and they're giving you a response from all the searches that they've done. Well, what does Google and all these other servers get their information from? They get their information from us. We've built Google. We built Google from all the searches that we've done and all the information that we put out. So it just goes to show the same thing with the trading in this financial environment, to where everybody, even the size participants, the buyer and the seller that we're watching here, and the wholesale in between, how are they making their trading decisions? They're making the trading decisions based off of historical, how humans have interacted in this environment in the past. So AI is really just a quick way of referencing that information and giving out a output that we can use to make better trading decisions. So it comes back to, it's just us that we're watching.
Yep. And you know, we're painting this picture here. We're painting this picture here, where we're stepping in front of the machine, and you know, there's a couple of trades that I was able to take, just knowing that they had to, just because of what they're doing, what we're doing, and then the separation, the division between the degrees of awareness, as you can watch this real time with the orders come in. So why are we going down? We're going down because these buyers are taking this, and our seller needs those buyers. And because these buyers aren't, we're watching volume decline, all right? We're watching volume decline. So as participation is leaving, and these only buyers come in, and I am a seller, and I need to get my liquidity out, there's now value in just squeezing these buyers. The little bit of liquidity that is coming in, being reflected as buyers, there's now value in just leaning on them. And when did I do that? I did that right. I did that right at my footprint, at my signature, the parts I can't hide because I'm doing this. So you can see, but you have to see with your own eyes and be honest, man, because they can't hide. Mm-hmm. In fact, they can't hide the reason. You know what? Let me go into that a little bit. They can't hide. They can't hide. And there is going to be a spectrum of the beings who can see exactly what I'm speaking. For real, for real. And they're leveling up to a whole new level as they're playing this game for real, for real. And see, that changes the game and the dynamic to where it's now starving to eat liquidity. It's now starving to generate participation, because there is a whole spectrum of beings who aren't taking the bait. They're not taking the bait like it was once in the wild west days, in the before times where there was no MNQ, there was just NQ and ES. Mm-hmm. There were no micros in the before time. Anyways, that was a bit of a rant, but we're in 100% agreement with what's happening. But I think it's good too. It is really good too. It's novel. It's right for the holidays for us to get here on a recording and a very real example of what it means to step front of the AI. Because at no point in all of this craziness was there any challenge here for me stepping in front of the AI, because it's moving to me. It's moving to us. All right, so with this new print, it's about 2 minutes remaining in this, minute 55, we're seeing more buyers come in. Order. And every time I say that, literally, like, what's going on? So you were talking about Google, Microsoft. I just had something show up on a feed where Microsoft is investing some millions and millions of dollars to some exchange. Let's just go ahead and put this out there. I don't think I put it out there for a mainstream where it's being outputted, and that's Google. Google is part of the CME. They have infrastructure investments into the CME. Okay, so all of this data collecting entities out there, they're in the marketplace, they're in the exchanges all across the spectrum. So all of this movement here, they're looking at the historical data, but let's go to the next page. Turn the page. They take that real time, right? And we're starting to see that real time with the RAI and the Word AI and all the different variations of the AI. But look at what's happened too. Let's get real time. We still have these buyers coming in as participation is declining, and I've got to lean on them because I've got to get out my supply. That's not going to change. And it's happening real time. 9:05 a.m. Central Standard Time for me. There's a buyer and there's a seller here. And one of them is going to have to do something. They have to do it. For whatever reason, they have to do it. But because these markets exist, they've got to move. And you'll see what the got to move is by just watching the truth. And the truth would be these variables that come in. Participation is measured in volume. The bid and the ask flow that's coming in. And then the footprint that's left in the movement. But see, you gotta, the hard part is canceling out all the programs that trigger our minds, you and me. Mm-hmm. And we've been hit with it since the moment we come out the womb. So it's not easy. That's why it's a journey with trading. You can quicken the journey just by being more honest with yourself and getting to the truth of your experiences. Exactly. Being honest with yourself.
I mean, that's why I recommend the way that I recommend, like, taking these courses and however you experience whatever external tool or source that you're using, just to use it as a mirror and let it expose the things that you need to work on, the things that you even need to strengthen, like your strengths, seeing your strengths and then leaning into your strengths.
That is the only way. Yep. That's a crazy, just what how do I say when I judge the statements? That's a bold statement. When people make bold statements, I go, that is a bold statement. But I'm gonna make a bold statement and say the only way you can be successful, the only way you can reach your dreams is if you do it. And how do you do it? You tap into you. And there is only one you. Now, the program wants to think you got to do what everybody else is doing. You got to be with the trend. You got to follow the program, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. No! The only way for you to find success, for you to get what you want, is you have to do it. And how you do it is tapping into you, holding the frequency of you, and then moving in the honesty of that responsibility with every bit of your movement, from your body language, from the words that you speak, from the wave, from the dance, everything. You're holding the frequency and then moving in it. Mm-hmm. To your own uniqueness. Now, it's a thing of balance because we're here. What's here? They call it Earth. All right, I'm going to stop. But look what's happening. We called this out from the beginning. I said, look, we're at these new highs. We did all that dance. And then we saw a seller lean in at the high. So I want to watch what this seller's doing because they came in off the high. That's a bold move. So I want to watch this bold move play out. And what happened? We pull liquidity. Liquidity starts to dry up after that. People don't know what to do to whatever degree. I'm going to say that bold statement because I can see it reflected in the data as it's coming in. So because people are stuck in the trade, they've already placed it. We're not getting any more liquidity. Well, I've got to move the other way to generate the liquidity. And what happens in sellers? Buyers come in. Sellers come in. Sellers come in behind that, right? Sellers come in behind that is what happens. And because those sellers are the only thing coming in as liquidity and participation's declining, it costs me no money to eat and squeeze them, going right back up to where I'm positioned. And then where I'm positioned, I'm going to hang out for 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 minutes. And I'm going to get every single buyer that's left who took my bait of squeezing out those sellers right in where I'm positioned. And then when there's no more left, guess what? I'm going to lean on them. I'm going to lean on them all the way to where we're at now, where that first buyer stepped in, and I pooled my liquidity to get them to come to where I'm positioned. All we're trading is the same thing we've always been trading, which is a reflection of ourselves on the other side. If I'm on the buy side, I gotta sell to I gotta buy from the seller, who's a reflection of me on the other side. But the difference becomes where we're seeing value. So if you can imagine, if there's screens now put in front of this, and then there's all of this saturation of programming to describe this and confuse this, we kind of get disconnected from the truth, what the truth is, and it's coming back, it's a reflection of ourselves. So I think this is one of these fired up episodes. And I'm gonna really be quiet now because we've already went over just quite the spectrum. Quite the spectrum has just been displayed here. And then you got the price action matched on the screen so that we can see this. And we got to see exactly what it means to step in front of AI, because what I'm describing, all right, the only way it can, look, I'm not even going to talk about that. I think I made my point and now I'm just rambling. I'm going to take some tea.
So I'm witnessing this thing on the topic of our seller. Well, you can see this from both sides, but I just witnessed it from the seller side, to where they leave a footprint. And now the interesting, I did it, everything that you just went through, what the idea that sparked is about this footprint that you can see. Now, I got a footprint that showed me that we were going to sell off after 10:04, after that little move that we had at 10:04. And there's because they have to, the way that they act, and because of this environment, they can't hide, and they show themselves. And it's just how you watch it and how you observe the footprint. Now, the interesting thing about that footprint, this is the point I want to get into, is that we can all watch the same footprint, but see it in a different way. And that's when we get back to the magic of you doing everything as you, doing everything from within. Because the way that I'm seeing this, the way that I observe the footprint and the way that I'm using it. Let me see if I can get a specific time point. Yeah, so around almost at 10:05, I could see that we were going to, by the way that they played the game right there, I could see that we were going to sell off. I just didn't know how far we were going to sell off. But interestingly, they sold off mechanically to the low of that, like right to the tick of the low of that value area that was created at the open. Or right before the open, actually. Well, no, that was like before the open and at the open. So during that whole little shift between the CPI and the first 30 minutes of the open, they showed their footprint to sell off there, and then they came back to this mechanical area that I highlighted before. We got before 9:30, and then now we're right back into automation. But I'm seeing this. The point I'm making is I'm seeing this footprint over here, or this footprint is, this is one area that it happened around 10:04, 10:05, and how I could see that. I could use that, my analysis of that, I could use that for my advantage if I wanted to, but I would have had to step outside of my strategy. That's beside the point. But I can use that how in the way that I've discovered it. However, somebody else can be watching the same thing, discover another way of analyzing or observing the footprint, and they could do the same thing. And I'm gonna get to a point to where once you realize this, and it gets kind of, I want to say it gets kind of scary. I don't know why I'm just, going straight to that, but it's not really. It's scary, but it's exciting at the same time. And I think the way that you have to do it, like right now, you was mentioning how you kind of how we have the trend and the way that the program is it leads you to think that you need to follow the trend. Like right now is a perfect time for all of that during these holiday seasons, and there's certain things that everybody has to fall into and have to do because that's just the thing to do. But one thing that I've been doing a lot lately is purposely going against that. And it's not just to be, well, I kind of do have a rebellious spirit, but it's not just to be it's not just to be rebellious. It's to break down that programming, that code, and to see what is truly there, and which way do I truly shift. Once I go against that and just let all of that be neutral, now what do I naturally go towards? Do I naturally go towards all the typical things, or do I go in another direction? And then once you start doing that, once I started doing that, that opened up and that revealed a lot of things to me.
You're tapping into your edge at that point when you do that. You're forcing yourself. You are putting yourself in the position. And see, that's a spiritual spin to the essence of MV3 trader right there, because not everybody can spin like that, because I would describe that as the hard way. You go through the hard way to learn, but guess what? I did it, and you get perspective if you're present and going through the hard way and then learning the uniqueness of you. Not everybody can do that, but man, I resonate with that. It hits me deep.
Yeah, I've only seen a couple people that actually have spoken, have done that same thing.
But you described it beautifully. I'm glad you got that out, man, because it's good too. Because now that you said that, I can't recall you breaking it down like this in one of your videos before. But it's been said, and to me, that's one of these moments of undeniables when it's getting into the physical as a reflection of you, and there is magic and power in that as it's happening real time. Man, so I don't want to necessarily make it get all spiritual, but we can just let's get back to the market so we can see our offer has moved down. So I'm watching. Like I said, I was more curious about what the seller's gonna do, because the seller's the one who's sitting in value right now. It's just when they're gonna show up. So they showed up. We had a little test where participation declined, so they pulled their liquidity. They moved right back up to the MSRP level. There's just a little slight discrepancy between me and you, but it doesn't matter. We're still looking at the same truth. And in that area, they just got every single buyer they could. And then when they started running out, see, they've got to move quickly. And the moment that they see this, they lean on it. That brings us right back down to where the buyer was. And we could almost argue that the technical break happened to trigger more sellers to come in when they broke down that buyer. And the moment that technical event took place as a moment that can be defined in time using these variables, we lean on those sellers just to be sure. We generate more buyers who see those sellers get trapped, and then those little bit of buyers, well, we lean on them. But they put money down for that. So more sellers are now coming to fight this battle, and that puts us in the auction block that we're in now. But our seller has come down. And the only reason I'm saying this too is because when you start identifying the spectrum, right? The spectrum. I'm not gonna, and And then I'm speaking from experience with doing this and being caught in tunnels. Caught in tunnels where I'm just seeing it, tunnel vision. It's much more difficult for me. Now, because it's much more difficult for me, it doesn't mean it necessarily is for you, or you as in the reflection across the spectrum, you. But I'm just offering this perspective. When you're stuck in a tunnel, whether it be micro or macro, and you're not getting shades of contrast with the environment that we're in, being Earth, we call it 2022, quote unquote, we're getting hit with program that's designed to trigger us. And when we're in a tunnel, it very much is a frequency to where we will be easily susceptible and triggered, if you get what I mean. So when you throw in a little bit of shade, grade, and perspective, it allows you to really see what we've been doing in tunnel vision against the contrast. So then you can really focus on when to use that tunnel vision, when you've got that perspective of where our beings are behind the tunnel vision that we're looking through. So I did just want to offer that a little bit before I completely sign off, because I don't know how much time we've been going. You don't go too long. Yeah, we just hit the hour mark. How about that?
Yeah, I'm already at the end of my trade window. I'm gonna watch it for a few more minutes.
Yeah. You see how we're leaning down right now? What are we leaning on? We're leaning on these buyers that are coming in. And you can see if you're just looking, if you're looking at the flow, for me, I'm looking at 3-minute segments and I'm just seeing the lack of liquidity. So we've already witnessed our seller moving down the offer and how our buyers aren't coming in. And if we've got a lack of liquidity and I'm the seller and I need to get this out, then I'm going to wait for the buyers. And with this lack of liquidity, it's taking every little bit of buyers that are coming in. We're starting to see the significance of what all of this means reflected in price right now. A minute and 4 seconds left for me. Go ahead.
I was gonna say we finally just made it back to VWAP, where we're picking up some inventory. We also got some MSRP down there. Another mechanical response off of MSRP. That didn't really take us. We're in this little phase of negotiating, taking us right back to inventory. So I think if we continue to drop inventory, that'll be telling for how far we can. I kind of mentioned that it's possible for us to
go all the way back down.
Yeah. And I think this little area right here would be really telling if how likely that is. So yeah, we starting to get that inventory response there. The buyer's really stepping in here from a micro level. Let's see how strong how eager our seller is to keep pushing this thing.
By riding this dragon for so long, I've just gotten really good at, because it likes to eat certain things after it does certain movements. So when I see this pattern, this path of riding the dragon in this degree of frequency, you know, it's screaming at me, I'm gonna go back down. I don't know exactly when or how,
Right.
but we're going back down. And I'm saying this with my orders where I'm the seller at the top, man. I'm the seller at the top, and guess where my target profits are? They're right back down all the way. It'd be 718. There was a buyer that stepped in and gave me a bit of space, but this buyer stepping in is the buyer that I need to see to unload more supply, because I gotta get this supply out. And that's the next buyer that I see, and that is all the way down. No, I don't want to give out trades. I'm not about that. I'm about triggering. I want to trigger you. I want to trigger your spirit to recognize you. Is actually what I'm about. But we're below 800. So that's where just right below 800 is where we've got a buyer hanging out. And that's the buyer I want to test. Now, if one shows up before then, that's a whole other thing and it creates a game. But in terms of right now, riding this dragon, ain't nobody showed up, and we're seeing a lack of liquidity. And the type of participation that I need to see, it makes me move to this degree. So I've got to continue to unload my supply because there's buyers here right now. And it's enough to where I see value in leaning on them. So I really think we go back down.
Yeah, we're looking at the same exact. I was about to say, express that same thing, but a little like before that, I could see some buyers around 950, but there's a big space between like 950 and 900, just as a general location. But we are getting an interesting inventory response here, but I think that's just. I'm looking at that as budgeting for right now.
Let's speak to that real quick. And offer a bit of perspective, shade, and grade that you can use to measure this each time it happens. So what just took place, especially in a 3-minute, because that's where I'm looking at as the board to this game. You got to triangulate you, and you do it with geometry, and part of that equation is the number 3. Now, anyways, with that being said, on the 3, a very important moment took place, and that was a break with this last print. So what happens next becomes very important. And right straight off the bat, with this lack of liquidity, only buyers are coming in. So if I need to eat and I need to get my supply out and only buyers are coming in, man. They have no, look at me just leaning. I'm only leaning a little bit. And I just broke that swing low there on that last print on the front candle of this 3-minute. I'm only leaning a little bit. And each time I do that, I'm generating more buyers. So this is exactly what I need to see to continue my movement. Now, when too many sellers come on and start eating in front of me, then that changes the dynamic and I've got to readjust. And we're starting to see that 2 degrees as I say that. All right, I'm going to stop talking because I know you got to do your thing.
I think that's a good point to call it a session. It's a good session. I love when you step in and you start, giving your perspective. It presents a lot of good learning experiences. So, anyway, with all that being said, I appreciate everybody for coming through. And then we'll be at it tomorrow again, same time, same place. And I'll see you then. Trade it easy.